Ricardo Wellington could never have imagined that coming home from work 2 hours early that Tuesday would turn his world upside down. A sound drifting from his son Daniel's bedroom stopped him in the mansion's hallway, furrowing his brow. It was laughter. Real, genuine laughter, the kind that came from a 5-year-old who hadn't felt joy in months. Daniel had been born with a mild case of cerebral palsy, a condition that primarily affected the movement of his legs and his overall motor coordination. Ever since, Ricardo had thrown himself even more obsessively into his work, running away from the pain of watching his only son struggle with limitations that no amount of money could fix. Guilt gnawed at him silently, turning him into an even more distant and emotionally unavailable man. He crept toward the half-open door, peering through the crack, and felt his blood run cold. There was Elena, the maid he had hired 6 months before, kneeling on the floor beside Daniel. But that wasn't the shocking part. It was what she was doing. Elena was gently holding Daniel's little legs, moving them in exercises that looked like professional physical therapy. Daniel was giggling as she hummed a sweet little tune, encouraging him to try and move the muscles on his own. The black woman's hands, roughened by housework, were manipulating the child's body with a precision and tenderness that Ricardo had never witnessed, not even from the most expensive private physical therapists. "Come on, little one. You can lift this leg all by yourself," Eleanor murmured in a loving voice. "Remember what we talked about yesterday? You're a brave little warrior." Daniel strained with effort, concentrating intensely, and managed to raise his leg a few centimeters off the floor. His eyes lit up with pride as Eleanor clapped her hands enthusiastically. "That's it! You're getting stronger every single day." Ricardo felt an explosive mix of emotions surging through him. Anger at discovering that a maid was interfering with his son's medical treatment without his permission. Confusion as he realized that Daniel was showing more progress in those few minutes than he had in months of conventional therapy. And a pang of something else, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. Maybe it was envy of the natural connection Elena had formed with Daniel. But there was something even more intriguing about the scene. Eleanor was talking to Daniel using technical medical terms as if she possessed specialized knowledge. How could a simple maid know about specific muscles, tension points, and mobilization techniques? The mystery deeply troubled him. Ricardo's wife, Sophia, appeared in the hallway, holding a cup of tea. She looked just as surprised to see her husband home so early, but her expression softened when she heard the sound of laughter coming from the bedroom. "Eleanor has a special gift with Daniel," she whispered as she walked closer. "Ever since she started taking care of him, our son has been showing signs of improvement that we've never seen before." Ricardo whirled around to face Sophia, his eyes flashing with anger. "You knew about this. You knew she was doing this." He gestured towards the bedroom, his voice thick with a tension he couldn't fully understand. Sophia lowered her gaze, looking uncomfortable. I noticed some things, yes, but Ricardo, just look at how happy Daniel is. It's been so long since he's smiled like that." Her words hit Ricardo like a punch to the gut. When was the last time he had really noticed Daniel's progress? When was the last time he had sat down on the floor to play with his own son? The guilt that already haunted him intensified, now mixed with a simmering anger directed at both Eleanor and himself. Just then, Eleanor helped Daniel sit up on the bed, and the boy gave her a spontaneous hug. "Thank you, Aunt Eleanor." Tomorrow I'll be able to lift both legs at the same time. You'll see." The scene struck a chord deep within Ricardo's hardened heart. For years, he had been desperately searching for something that would bring hope and joy back into Daniel's life. And there it was, happening right under his nose, thanks to someone he had considered to be just another employee. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more moving stories like this. Now, Ricardo had to decide what to do with this unsettling discovery, one that threatened to completely change the dynamics of his family. The next morning, Ricardo couldn't focus on a single meeting. His mind kept drifting back to the scene he had witnessed in Daniel's room. He decided to leave work early again, this time determined to confront Eleanor directly. He needed to understand what was going on inside his own house. When he got home, he found Eleanor in the kitchen preparing Daniel's afternoon snack. She greeted him with a polite smile, but Ricardo noticed a flicker of nervousness in her dark eyes. She knew she had been found out. "Eleanor, I need to talk to you," Ricardo said, trying to keep his voice steady. "It's about what I saw yesterday in Daniel's room." Eleanor stiffened, her hands freezing in the middle of slicing fruit. "Mr. Ricardo, I can explain." "Explain what? That you're playing doctor with my son without my permission?" Ricardo's voice came out harsher than he intended. "You're not trained for that. You're just a housemaid." The words cut through the air like sharp knives. Eleanor lowered her eyes, her hands trembling slightly. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to overstep my boundaries." But there was something in Eleanor's demeanor that intrigued Ricardo. Despite her apparent submissiveness, he sensed a quiet determination in her posture, as if she was guarding a secret, something important enough that its revelation could completely change the situation. "Where did you learn those techniques?" Ricardo pressed. "Where does a maid learn about physical therapy?" Elena hesitated for a long moment, as if she was struggling internally with whether to tell the truth or stay silent. Finally she murmured, "My younger brother. He was born with similar problems to Daniel, so I took care of him for 12 years, sir. I learned by watching physical therapists, reading books at the public library, watching videos online. My family didn't have the money for expensive treatments, so I became his physical therapist." Eleanor looked up, and for the first time Ricardo saw a burning passion in her eyes. "My brother Miguel walks today, runs, plays soccer. The doctors said he never would." The revelation hit Ricardo like a bolt of lightning. His anger began to mix with something more complex, grudging respect and also a pang of shame. This woman had managed with love and dedication to achieve what he, with all his wealth, had failed to provide for his own son. "You had no right to make decisions about my son's treatment without talking to me first," Ricardo said, but his voice had lost some of its initial edge. "You're right, sir," Elena agreed, lowering her eyes again. "But Daniel was so sad, so discouraged. I just wanted to help." Just then, Daniel walked into the kitchen, using his crutches, but wearing a radiant smile. "Daddy, you came home early again. Elena, can I show Daddy what I learned yesterday?" Ricardo looked at his son, noticing something he hadn't seen before. Daniel was visibly more upright, his posture more confident. There was a spark in his eyes that Ricardo hadn't seen in a long time. "Daniel, go back to your room. The adults are talking," Ricardo said, more out of habit than actual intention. Daniel's smile immediately faded. Eleanor bent down to his level. "How about you wait for me in the living room? I'll teach you a new exercise in a few minutes." After Daniel left, Eleanor turned back to Ricardo, her determination renewed. "Mr. Ricardo, I know you see me as just a maid, and maybe that's all I am, but your son is improving, and you know it." "Improving?" Ricardo scoffed. "You saw him for a few minutes. I see Daniel every day." "For 6 months," Elena interrupted, her voice growing stronger. "I see him crying when he thinks no one is watching. I see him struggling not to disappoint the expensive physical therapists you hire. I see a smart, brave boy who just needs someone who truly believes in him." Elena's words echoed in Ricardo's chest like a silent accusation. When was the last time he had really looked at Daniel, not just at his limitations, but at his possibilities? "My method may not be as scientific as the professionals," Eleanor continued, "but it's done with real love, and sometimes that makes all the difference." Ricardo felt a turbulent mix of emotions. On one hand, his wounded pride resisted the idea that a maid could achieve what expensive specialists could not. On the other hand, he couldn't deny the results he was seeing in Daniel. But there was still another mystery that intrigued him. How did Eleanor manage to maintain such dedication after working all day, taking care of the house? What drove her to invest so much time and energy in her employer's son? In the days that followed, Ricardo started to observe Eleanor differently, no longer seeing her as a simple employee, but as an enigma he needed to understand. He discreetly installed extra security cameras in the house, officially to increase security, but really to monitor Eleanor's activities with Daniel. What he discovered from the recordings left him deeply disturbed, though not in the way he expected. Elena arrived an hour early every day without being paid for that extra time. She stayed late after her official hours, helping Daniel with his motor coordination exercises. On weekends, when she should have been resting, she voluntarily came in to continue the improvised therapy sessions. Ricardo discovered that Eleanor had transformed Daniel's room into a kind of home rehabilitation clinic. She used ordinary household objects in creative ways. Pillows became obstacles for balance exercises, clothing elastics turned into muscle-strengthening equipment, and even plastic bottles filled with sand served as weights for physical therapy. But there was something even more interesting. Eleanor kept a detailed notebook recording Daniel's progress, which techniques worked best, and his emotional reactions. It was a record more complete and thorough than any medical report Ricardo had ever received from professional physical therapists. One afternoon, Ricardo decided to follow Eleanor after her shift. He wanted to understand where all that inexplicable dedication came from. Eleanor took 2 buses until she reached a poor neighborhood on the outskirts of the city, where she entered a simple house with a messy yard. Ricardo waited on the street for nearly 2 hours until he saw her come out, accompanied by a young black teenager who looked to be about 15 years old. The boy walked with a slight limp, but his movements were smooth and confident. It was Miguel, the brother Elena had mentioned. Together, they walked to a nearby park, where Miguel started playing soccer with other boys. Watching from a distance, Ricardo was impressed by the boy's athletic ability. Miguel didn't just participate in the game, he stood out, dribbling past opponents and scoring goals with an agility that defied any previous physical limitation. He was living proof of the effectiveness of Elena's unconventional methods. Ricardo cautiously walked closer to the field. Elena was sitting on a bench, watching her brother play with a proud smile. When she noticed her boss's presence, she visibly tensed up. "Mr. Ricardo, What are you doing here?" "Following you," Ricardo replied with brutal honesty. "I wanted to understand why you care so much about Daniel." Eleanor lowered her eyes, looking clearly uncomfortable with the situation. "I don't know what you want me to say." "The truth. Why would a housemaid dedicate so much time and energy to her boss's son? What's in it for you?" Elena remained silent for a long moment, watching Miguel score another goal. Finally, she sighed deeply. "My brother isn't just my responsibility, Mr. Ricardo. He's my inspiration. When he was little and the doctors said Miguel would never walk normally, I promised myself I would prove them wrong." "And you did?" "Yes, but it wasn't just because of the physical exercises. It was because I never stopped believing in him. I never let him see himself as limited or different. And when I see Daniel," Eleanor paused, carefully choosing her words, "I see a boy with the same potential Miguel had, but surrounded by adults who have already given up on him." The words hit Ricardo like a slap in the face. "Are you accusing me of giving up on my own son?" "I'm not accusing anyone, sir. I'm just saying that Daniel needs someone who believes in the impossible." Just then Miguel came over, sweaty from the game. "Elena, who is this?" "He's my boss, Miguel. Ricardo Wellington." Miguel extended his hand politely. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Wellington. Elena always talks about your work." Ricardo shook the boy's hand, noticing the firmness of his grip and the confidence in his eyes. "Elena told me about you. It's impressive to see how you play soccer." "Elena taught me that limitations exist only in our minds," Miguel smiled. "She always said that if I really wanted something, I'd find a way to make it happen." Ricardo looked at Elena with a new expression, a mix of admiration and shame. He began to realize that he had misjudged not only her abilities, but also her motivations. Eleanor wasn't trying to impress him or get something in return. She simply saw in Daniel an opportunity to repeat the miracle she had achieved with her own brother. But there was still another mystery that intrigued him. During his surveillance, Ricardo had noticed that Elena sometimes left the house late at night carrying a mysterious bag. Where she went on those occasions and what she carried in that bag remained an enigma that fueled his curiosity more and more. The following week, Ricardo decided to follow Elena during one of her mysterious nighttime outings. It was almost 10 o'clock at night when she left the house with her usual bag. Ricardo discreetly followed her to a community center in the neighborhood where she lived. The sign at the entrance was faded. Sao Pedro Community Rehabilitation Center. Through the window, Ricardo saw something that left him completely speechless. Eleanor was at the center of an improvised room, surrounded by about 15 children with various physical disabilities. She had transformed that simple space into a volunteer physical therapy clinic, using the same creative methods she used with Daniel. The children called her Teacher Eleanor and followed her instructions with contagious enthusiasm. The mysterious bag contained homemade physical therapy materials, educational toys, and makeshift equipment that she had created using her own money. Eleanor was dedicating not only her extra hours to Daniel, but also her nights to other children who, like Miguel, didn't have access to expensive treatments. Ricardo watched Elena help a 7-year-old girl take her first steps without crutches. The joy on the child's face and the pride shining in Elena's eyes brought a lump to the businessman's throat. At that moment, he realized that he wasn't dealing with a simple housemaid, but with someone whose life had a purpose far greater than he could ever have imagined. The next day, Ricardo confronted Elena once again. but this time with a completely different approach. "Elena, I need to ask you a question, and I want an honest answer," Ricardo said, finding her in the kitchen. "Why have you never told me about your work at the community center?" Elena stopped washing the dishes, her hands trembling slightly. "Mr. Ricardo, I can explain." "No need to explain. You need to answer me. Do you have an official qualification in physical therapy?" Eleanor sighed deeply, as if preparing to make a confession she had been holding back for a long time. "Yes, sir." "I graduated in physical therapy 3 years ago from the State University. I studied on a full scholarship while working nights to support myself." The revelation hit Ricardo like a tidal wave. "You're a trained physical therapist, and you're working as a housemaid. Why?" "Because no one hires a black physical therapist from a poor neighborhood who doesn't have clinical experience in private hospitals," Eleanor replied, with a mixture of sadness and resignation. "I sent resumes to dozens of clinics, hospitals, and rehabilitation centers. The answer was always the same: lack of experience in suitable environments." Ricardo felt a sharp pang of shame, realizing his own contribution to this exclusionary system. How many times had he hired professionals based solely on their appearance and recommendations from people in his social circle? "So you accepted working here as a maid, knowing that you could be practicing your profession?" "I needed the job, sir, and when I saw Daniel I thought maybe I could help discreetly, without anyone knowing. I didn't imagine I would be discovered." Just then, Daniel walked into the kitchen, walking without his crutches for the first time since he was born. His steps were cautious but firm. The boy went straight to Elena and hugged her. "Elena, I managed to walk here by myself, just like you said I would." Ricardo froze. His son had just walked independently for the first time in his life, and this momentous achievement had happened thanks to someone he had treated with disdain and suspicion for months. Elena knelt down to be at Daniel's level. "I knew you could do it, champ. You're the bravest boy I know." Daniel turned to his father, his eyes shining with pride. "Daddy, did you see? I walked by myself." "Aunt Elena taught me that I can do anything if I really believe." Ricardo walked over to his son, knelt down, and hugged him with an intensity he hadn't shown in years. Tears streamed down his face as he held Daniel, feeling the strength in his little legs that had once seemed so fragile. "I'm sorry, son," Ricardo whispered. "I'm sorry for not believing in you the way Eleanor did." Eleanor watched the emotional scene and then started to quietly back away. Ricardo called out, "Elena, wait, don't leave." She stopped, turning around with tears in her eyes. "I owe you an apology." "Several apologies," Ricardo continued, still holding Daniel. "You gave my son back to me, and I treated you as if you were just another employee. Mr. Ricardo, no. Let me finish. You are far more than I deserve to have in my house, and now I need to find a way to make up for all the injustice I committed." 3 months later, Eleanor could hardly believe the change that had occurred in her life. Ricardo had not only officially promoted her to Daniel's private physical therapist with a salary 5 times higher than what she had been making, but he had also invested heavily in a complete renovation of the São Pedro Community Rehabilitation Center. The once improvised space was now a modern, well-equipped clinic where Eleanor provided free care to all the children in the community. Ricardo had hired a multidisciplinary team to work under Elena's supervision: 2 physical therapists, a child psychologist, and an occupational therapist. But the changes didn't stop there. Ricardo started working part-time, dedicating entire afternoons to monitoring Daniel's progress. For the first time in years, father and son developed a real connection, playing together, laughing together, and dreaming together. Sophia, who had initially resisted the drastic changes in the family's routine, had now become Eleanor's biggest supporter. The two women had become close friends, and Sophia frequently accompanied Eleanor to the community center, volunteering in activities with the children. Daniel, in turn, had become a little celebrity at school. Not only could he walk normally, but he also participated in adapted sports and was actively involved in all activities. More importantly, he had developed an unshakable sense of self-confidence and an extraordinary sense of empathy for someone his age. One special afternoon, Daniel asked if he could give a presentation at school about his journey to recovery. Ricardo and Sophia were in the audience as the boy walked onto the stage confidently without any assistance. "My name is Daniel Wellington," the boy began, his voice clear and steady. "A year ago, I used crutches and thought I would never be able to do the things that other kids do. Today, I want to tell you how I learned that limitations only exist in our minds." Daniel told his story simply, but with heartfelt emotion. He talked about the difficult days, the sadness he felt, and how Eleanor came into his life like an angel disguised as a housemaid. He explained how she taught him that every small step forward was a victory, and that giving up should never be an option. "Eleanor taught me that it doesn't matter where you come from or what color your skin is. What matters is the size of your heart and your willingness to help others," Daniel said, looking for Eleanor in the audience. "Today, I can walk, run, play soccer, and I've even made new friends. But most importantly, I've learned to believe in myself." The audience erupted in thunderous applause. Ricardo felt a sense of pride that was unlike anything he had ever experienced before. Not just pride for his son, but also for having had the humility to recognize his mistakes and the wisdom to appreciate Eleanor. After the presentation, Eleanor approached Daniel with tears in her eyes. "You were amazing, champ. I'm so proud of you." "Aunt Eleanor, I have a surprise," said Daniel, taking an envelope from Ricardo's hands. "Daddy helped me write this for you." Eleanor opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was an official document. A full scholarship for a specialization in pediatric physical therapy at the country's top university, along with a partnership contract for the new rehabilitation center, which was now to be called the Elena Miguel Institute of Child Therapy. "I can't accept this," Elena murmured, overcome with emotion. "You can, and you will accept it," said Ricardo, walking up to her. "This isn't a favor, Elena. It's justice. It's recognition for everything you've done for my family and for dozens of other families in this community." Sophia joined the group, taking Eleanor's hands in hers. "You're no longer our employee, Eleanor. You're our family, and family takes care of each other." Miguel, who had been invited to the presentation, gave his sister a proud hug. "Eleanor, you always told me I could achieve anything. Now it's your turn to believe in the impossible." 2 years later, the Elena Miguel Institute had become a national leader in child therapy. Elena had completed her specialization with honors and was treating children from all over the country. Her method, which combined scientific techniques with genuine love and creativity, had revolutionized traditional rehabilitation concepts. Daniel, now 8 years old, had become the Institute's junior ambassador, visiting schools to talk about inclusion and overcoming challenges. His friendship with Elena remained as strong as ever, and he considered her his second mother. Ricardo had learned the most important lesson of his life. The true value of a person isn't measured by diplomas, money, or social status, but by their ability to transform lives through love and dedication. Eleanor had arrived at his home as a housemaid, but revealed herself to be an angel in disguise, sent to teach him that miracles happen when we least expect them, through the hands of those we often overlook. The Wellington family's story became a powerful reminder that sometimes we need to let go of our certainties in order to discover deeper truths, and that life's greatest treasures often come wrapped in the simplicity of those who dedicate their lives to serving others with unconditional love. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel for more inspiring content showing how small actions can transform entire lives.